Welcome to everyone for joining another session of A Day in the Life of a BA. I'm James, the President of IIBA Ireland, and I'll be your host today. At IIBA Ireland, our mission is to support professionals by sharing knowledge, common terminology, and practical insights into the work that us business analysts do across different industries or sectors. And that's the whole point of this series, to give you a chance to hear directly from BA professionals about their typical day. Each month, we're inviting a separate BA professional to highlight the personal journey that they've gone through, the approaches that they've taken, the technologies that they've relied on, the tasks that they do, or any challenges and successes that they've encountered within their particular industry or journey. So whether you're considering a career in business analysis, already working alongside BAs, or simply looking to deepen your understanding of the role, today's session is designed to give you that clarity, confidence, and a shared language for working effectively with BAs. And today, I'm delighted to be joined by Imtiaz, a business analyst who has worked as a contractor. So Imtiaz will be sharing about his day in the life of what it's like going through contracting, sharing practical insights, and any kind of challenges that he has experienced so far. Please feel free to turn on your cameras, and throughout the session, you're more than welcome to interact with other attendees via the chat. If you have any questions, you can put them into the Q&A tab, or we can ask them at the end if you just want to raise your hand so you can come off mute. So without further ado, Imtiaz, it's over to you.
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name's Imtiaz. Thanks for coming. We've got honoured to have people from very, very different time zones across in the US and Australia. So it's really, really cool. Thank you for joining, and hope you get some value from this session. And with that, please ask questions. Please keep it interactive. I can yap on for a long time, but try ask your questions, and we'll try and answer them and get additional value and insight from you guys. So please do make it as interesting as possible. I've been a BA, as James said, for a fair while, a fair chunk. And I kind of think I'm more of an accidental BA rather than a deliberate one. And I say that because I fell into it from a perspective of my background's operations, retail management, retail marketing. And I never, ever wanted to work in IT and have anything to do with you lot. But I fell into it, and I quite liked being that person in the team I was in. I loved asking all the questions and asking, why do you want it? What benefits do you want? How do you want it to look? Because we were spending a lot of money with suppliers in our team. We weren't kind of getting the benefits and the value. And I quite like being that middle person in a way that liked to piece that jigsaw together. And after a couple of years, it turned out that it's had the makings of a BA. And ever since then, I stuck with it and still do it today. Still really, really enjoy it. As frustrating sometimes it is, and annoying at times. Still really, really enjoy it. And my journey into freelancing is often, the first question, right? What made you do it? Why, did you have some grand plan? What was your strategy? What was your thinking? And for me personally, there wasn't. I'd love to say there was. I'd love to say I did a strategy, I did a little VMost, I had a vision board. I had a clear picture of exactly what I was doing. But James may be too young to remember. He's a young lad. Back in 2008, this thing called the credit crunch came. And if you're old enough like me to remember it, that hit me hard. So my son was a month old at the time. My wife was on maternity, and I got made redundant from my permanent job. It was going well, actually. The company was doing really well. It was in the gaming sector, and at the time, that industry was doing really, really well. Credit crunch came, this whole crisis erupted, and everything just shut down, basically, right? Kind of went into quite a massive global recession. And so for me, it's rolling the dice. It was actually simply finding a job, finding some income. And it was rolling the dice. And, the fact is, for me, it was the first offer I got after nearly 18 months without employment. So everyone's different, right? Everyone's got a story to tell. Whether you're thinking about, is there a different way? Whether it really is a roll of the dice and what happens first. Whether you're in between situations, whether you're returning to work person, you know, for whatever reason, and you're contemplating this kind of different life. It's worth thinking about it a little bit more than I did. Because when I started, I didn't have a company, didn't have a bank account, didn't have anything. I was very, very raw into it. And so I'll talk you through some of that experience as we go. But like I said, please do ask questions. And I remember the first day of my first contract. And I'm used to being a permanent member of staff, right? Where you generally have quite a nice first week. You meet a few people, have a bit of a tea, bit of a lunch with people, maybe get into a couple of bits and pieces just to familiarize yourself with a company. And it's all a bit, it's quite nice and friendly, and, you're part of a team and all that good stuff. And I remember the first day, such a vivid recollection. The project manager of the project I was on basically walked up to me, little hello, barely even a handshake, literally dumped like just the most amazing wedge of paper on my desk and said, these are the signed off requirements for the project you're on. In 2 days, I need UAT test scripts so that the client can begin UAT. And I'm like, whoa. Again, didn't know about imposter syndrome, didn't know about all this kind of other stuff, right? Just thinking, what am I doing? Right, again, not worked for a long time, suddenly like mayhem, this crazy deadline. Sink or swim time? Like I literally felt like walking out, throwing up, walking out, kind of, bit of a heads gone moment. Just sat there wondering, what do I do next? Can I do it? Have I got skill? Is there enough time? What do I do first? And sometimes you do face that sink or swim moment, right, where you either survive or you don't. Can be quite challenging, can be very stressful for sure. At times, and you've got to work out, like, can I do it? And for me, luckily, I chose try and do it. I chose to try and get on with it, and I kind of went back to my retail days when I was used to doing very long hours and working, quite unsociable hours as well. Just rolled my sleeves up, got it done. And then a couple of days later, when I began to sort of produce some of that work, the PM actually said to me, I didn't actually think you'd do it. He was half expecting me to say, look, it'll take me 5 days or 6 days, can I have more time? But I kind of got a pat on the back, and, and he said, well done. And it kind of, continued from there. But I realized at that point, there is skill involved. But when you're freelancing, when you're contracting, those kind of easy to say words of resilience, adaptability, trying to find some clarity in what often is chaos. Another type skills, really, really important, because you don't have HR, right? Don't have a line manager. You don't have this team that you can kind of just, have a little moan at, swear at, kind of vent for a little bit. There's nobody you can complain to about treatment as such, right? You are kind of working for yourself, and you've got to deliver every hour of every day and prove, show value at all times. So it is a really, really good journey, but it isn't always paved with gold and roses. There are some bumps along the way, as well as some good things about it as well. And before we kind of move any further, anyone thinking about a move into the freelance world, or are you just quite happy where you are and just can sort of hear for a bit of insight, perhaps? Anyone fancy coming off mute?
I am a contractor, but probably not like freelancing. I am working for a company, and thankfully I've got really nice people I work with. So, but yeah, in terms of like freelancing, I don't know how does that work. Want to do freelancing, but more in the coaching space. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So you can't do more individuals and stuff, right? As opposed to.
So I have been a contractor for about 8-9 years now. But as I said,
Right.
thankfully, I've got good people around. I don't get treated like a contractor. Yeah, but just that, I'm not on permanent payrolls and HR and all that stuff. But yeah, it doesn't feel any different. Of course, I don't get paid for public holidays, so that's not a good thing. But
yeah. Every bank holiday is a bad day. You don't get paid. Yeah, I'd say it's good. It is a fun journey, good journey. You do learn a lot of resilience. You got a chance to train yourself and learn skills that maybe you wouldn't have the opportunities to. Pick challenges, pick companies you want to work for, pick projects. Do multiple companies, multiple projects as well at the same time, which can be hard. Nothing easy about having 2 or 3 different projects on the go. It's hard enough doing one sometimes, but 2 or 3 can be really, really hard, really challenging, but equally as rewarding. It's a bit of a journey, and as part of that, we developed this. So my business partner and I, he's not on the call, I don't think, Lewis. Lewis and I devised this little snakes and ladders game, which you can see at the back on my screen. So I'm just going to bring it up and do a little screen share. Where is it? Any questions in Q&A, James? Or we?
Sorry, I put something in the chat. Yeah, you were asking about this. I had to move, sorry, so I could talk. I'm thinking about wondering about how effective this would be as kind of a career progression. As a BA, I've worked in 2 different industries now, and for employers, part of a full-time team. And if I don't want to end up being a team leader or moving into project management and things, if I enjoy being a BA, I was wondering about this is one of the things I'm thinking of too, so I don't get stuck at the same level, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Again, from my experience, it's really helped my professional development in that I've managed to choose my training, choose what I want to learn about. And that's therefore helped me a lot, because I've done some, I guess, weird and wonderful courses, away from the classic CBAP maybe, or the classic sort of BCS diploma. Got into world of design thinking, a bit of Prince 2, done a bit of ITIL. So I've kind of, gone around the circle a little bit just to kind of learn some different disciplines, which has definitely helped me in my career. Helped me to, I guess, deliver better on projects. And even though I'm just a BA on project, I've actually, with a lot of clients, I guess, got some seniority. Even though officially it's not my title, but I've ended up sort of managing, coaching, mentoring other people. Created a couple of BA communities along the way with clients that I've had, just because you gain a lot of experience and a lot of exposure to various situations. So I definitely think that's an advantage. Back, and I was personally frustrated at the lack of training, perhaps, available, on offer to me. Limited by, you've got to do, or the only thing available is CBAP type of thing, which is brilliant, right? It's a brilliant certification. But, there's also more that you kind of can do.
Yeah.
Which I've really enjoyed. So
I have a really practical question for you. And I'm sure that things are different here in the US than they are where you are, but and I'm sure it kind of varies based on your client and what you're doing for them. I'm thinking of transitioning. I'm retiring, planning on retiring next year. But one of the particular business units that I work with really have low technical acumen, and I really help them do a lot of things from requirements to actually doing configurations in some of the privacy sector, data privacy. We're in healthcare, and I'm curious to know how you charge for your time. Are you kind of on a retainer with them and they say, oh, we need you to come in and help us do this? Or do you charge by the project, or do you charge by the hour? What are some of the different ways you've done your compensation for your time?
I think probably all of the above. There's a thing in, I'm not sure how global it is, but definitely in the UK, a thing called IR35, which some of you may have heard of if you're kind of UK based, which is a bit of legislation basically trying to ensure contractors are truly contractors, i.e. where we're there to do a specific piece of work that, you know, that kind of other people can't do, or the specialist to discipline, and you kind of, it's trying to, I guess, prove that you're actually a freelance contractor as opposed to disguising as a permanent employee, because sometimes you can be, you know, a client for kind of a long time, and it's viewed as almost disguised employment. But I mean, you know, to your question, I do a lot of like statement of work type contracts where I'm being paid to deliver a certain thing. So I'm moving away from the classic day rate to deliverables based. So if I'm doing, you know, like, you know, I've got 3 months to get requirements signed off type of thing, I'm charging for doing that work. And if it's 2 hours on a Monday and 5 hours on Wednesday, it's great, right? Don't need to be sort of full time. So that kind of works, you know, that kind of version. I've done sort of retainer gigs where it's been, you know, 10 hours a week. I've had it a couple of times when I've finished at a client and they've wanted to keep me on, just for that sort of expertise type, sort of, you know, knowledge that you've gained as well. So yeah, I've tried to move away from, I guess, selling days and selling time. I kind of don't like to be fixed, really, I'd have to say, personally. Well, I've got to be there, you know, 5 days a week, 9 to 5. Yeah, I do try and vary it now, and you can do, right? You can negotiate. A big skill is negotiating those contracts with people, and having the confidence to actually negotiate, and then obviously doing your best to get what you want that fulfills what they need as well.
Thank you.
So you absolutely can. Yeah. That's the beauty of it, right? You have a couple of clients, you know, you can be busy 10, 20, 30 hours a week, depends on the week. And you can get a bit of spare time back, which is quite nice. Quite a good balance as well in today's world. So yeah, this model. So we created this, Lewis and I, and we take people through it who are thinking about that transition into freelance. We try to make it fun. We try to sort of gamify it, and it's obviously, you know, a very serious thing. But we try to kind of get, you know, create a bit of humour around it, bring it to life. And so behind every box is a lot of detail, right? A lot of advice, a lot of, you know, support in how you research different gigs, how you know, network with people, how you know, maybe develop some softer skills, how you create good CVs, how you do LinkedIn, all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of detail. But really, you know, also meant to define the snakes and ladders is there's a lot of cool things, right? You climb the ladder and good times occur. You know, take some courses, identify some skill gaps, negotiate some good contracts, get a lot of freedom, get a lot of money, get a lot of control over your destiny. You know, some really, really good things. But there are a number of pitfalls, right? and that snake is meant to bring that to life. And I remember one example where we'd sealed a deal on a property, but in the interim of kind of agreeing this thing and going through to the end phase of exchanging, which in the UK is a kind of maybe perhaps a different process, but there's kind of multiple steps in that process. I lost my contract, and I couldn't get a new contract. And so by the time it came to the end of that mortgage process, the offer got rescinded from the company. So I wasn't in employment, and I had, no income sort of coming in, even though I was kind of paying myself. The argument from their side was, you're now too much of a risk. So there are some massive, which have implications, right? Not just on me, but there's a family and there's other stuff going on. So these things do have implications, on personal life as much as professional life. And so it's meant to depict, it is a great thing, in my opinion, to experience, but it isn't all rosy, right? You will have some down periods. You will have a bit of negativity. You will have weeks, months, perhaps, when you can't find work. You may want to have a break, which again, equally is good, but doing invoicing, doing accounts, reading contracts, trying to be a lawyer, not the most fun exercise to do in the world, but it's all part of that learning and development that we kind of go through, right? And over time we learn, maybe perhaps to be a semi-decent account manager, have a lens of accounting and accounting laws in the jurisdiction you're working in and living in, good ability to read contracts and understand contracts. Clearly AI helps with a lot of this. All right, shouldn't rely on it 100%, but it certainly helps with, looking at documents like P&Ls and balance sheets, contracts for sure. So a little bit different in today's world. But we take people through this, and again, start here is box one. But depending on your situation, you may have a great CV, you may have wonderful LinkedIn profile. So it's all about configuring it and kind of tailoring it to where you are in the journey. But quite a fun sort of board where we talk about operational setup. So there's some things you have to think about, unlike me when I first started, but think about your basic admin, the basic legals of contracts, technologies and tools. So suddenly, you have to buy your own machine. Then you've got to fund software and hardware that, doesn't come out of, comes out of thin air initially, because you're just starting out as a business. So having some foundations in place are quite key, which often we just don't think about, right? And I didn't think about until month 3 or 4. And the whole self-marketing can be quite a challenge, especially when you're used to permanent life. Quite a challenge. How do I think about networking, turning up to events and trying to make friends, sell yourself to your services, promote myself through CVs, LinkedIn's, all this sort of stuff. Trying to have more of a business hat on rather, more than just a networking hat on. So we take people through kind of, what do I stand for? What do I want? Defining services, helping people to do more with networking and LinkedIn and CVs. And it's a bigger world than just LinkedIn, right? Believe it or not, there's a lot more than just LinkedIn out there, which we can take advantage of and should take advantage of. And LinkedIn's powerful, but there is more. And we've got to think as well. Suddenly I've got to start thinking, well, okay, I'm good today, but tomorrow might not be that rosy. So I'm always thinking 2, 3, 4 steps into the future. What if? What do I need to have in place this time next year? Like now, for example, AI. Right, as a freelancer, I've got to be thinking this thing called AI, right? What is it? How do I use it? Can I, as a freelancer, sit back and ignore it? Right? I'm not suggesting as a permanent person you can. But as a freelancer, I need to think, right, about the future. Just bear with me 1 second. Yes, I'm thinking right ahead. AI, what is it? Well, I need to work out this new technology and think, okay, there's a world now that this technology is going to be very prevalent in everything I do, everything we do, everything the companies out there are doing, and how can I use it to benefit my journey as a freelancer? So again, you've got to start thinking, okay, well, I've got to maybe invest in some technology, give it a go, figure out how I can use it, and try and be one step ahead of the game, right? So I can use some of these new cool toys that are available in the world to my benefit. So my CV looks a bit better, so I can appeal more to some clients maybe as well in the future. So constantly thinking, and again, we sort of talk people through it. The interview process, very different to perm. Again, I've had interviews last 15 minutes and I've been offered a contract. I've sometimes not even had an interview and been offered a contract, all the way through to a couple of interviews. But a very different style that I've experienced with interviews. Other than when I was permanent, I had to do some tests and I had to go back to sometimes 3 interviews. So you've got a, very different flavour of, generally speaking, that we get as freelance people. And negotiation, right? Do we negotiate the pay on offer? Sorry, someone's got a hand up. Who's that? So I can see a hand up. Sarah, can I ask you? Was that the question you've got in Q&A? I've just seen it.
Yeah, no, but it's another question actually I was just thinking of there. You were talking about AI, and using AI. Is that's something that's come up in my current role, and it would have happened in my previous role as well. When you're using software and stuff, do clients request that you use their resources and their software and do everything on kind of their domains and servers? Or like how do you, because obviously you have to protect their data or their IP, and I know that's something that we have with the AI that we use in-house. We have a contract to make sure that they don't train their AI engine on our data. So that's something you'd have to...
Yeah, be careful. Be really careful. I would never recommend just taking whatever company information and using your personal version of whatever, Gemini is and all the other tools out there. Be really careful how you use company data and using AI. Use company tools, right? And generally, a lot of companies are now moving, especially if you're a Microsoft house, they're generally incorporating Copilot into kind of their stacks. It doesn't stop me, I guess, on the side, getting advice using AI, right, and just asking it questions and helping me on the journey. Again, I'm quite careful to keep it quite anonymous and not use names and not use specific kind of references, but you can still use it to help you. But yeah, wouldn't via anything official, any documents you're creating, right? Be really, really careful and use, don't stop, putting yourself at risk ultimately, right? Because you're breaking, you chance that you're breaking contract as well at that point.
Okay.
Because it's always in a contract, right? About use of hardware, use of software, and within the boundaries permitted. So, you do need to be careful. But I know, like on my last contract, and I'm not trying to boast here or anything, but because I've invested a bit of time learning things like Copilot, I can use it fairly well. And I can sort of either help people or, kind of show people how to use, an authorized version of AI to the benefit of individuals. So. And it is cool, actually.
Yeah, I've used it a lot to do things like create macros and tools for me. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I'm sure James will tell me off, but I could do a whole other session on how really cool and how beneficial it is Do you have a standard contract you send to clients? No. No, generally it comes from the client. But I guess I've, in that process of getting the offer, there's also been that negotiation around things, right? Freedom to work, freedom to substitute, days of the month, timings of days, rates, etc., right? So that discussion's happened, and hopefully the contract that comes reflects some of that. And if it doesn't, right, stand firm, negotiate, right? Negotiate well, negotiate hard, and get what you need, which is a bit of a skill and it takes time. Like, I can train you in good negotiation, but you've got to do it, I think. Actually negotiating is quite a skill and quite hard. And so, it's quite hard to do first time, second time, but like everything, it kind of gets a little bit easier. Yeah, so review and get legal help, right? If valid. I certainly used to. I'm a bit more familiar with it now, so you kind of realize after a while the words are being used, and it's a lot of things are a little bit standard. But lawyers help. Getting good advice helps. There's a lot of good forums on the internet as well. You realize there's a lot of good places you can go to for good advice on contracts. But again, I'm quite a fan of, at least in the short term, getting expert help, and to not leave yourself open, because you've got to be careful with that stuff. Like I said, it's hard to close a deal. You work hard. I mean, I think I'll say, I'm not sure how many people are on the call, but I had one contract. I was traveling 2 hours a day one way. Right? I chose to do it, right? So I'm not sort of looking for sympathy, but you take on sometimes, gigs that involve a bit of travel, a bit of real tiredness kicking in, right? And you're working hard on the client site you're on. And I'm getting back to pre-COVID, where I was in the office 5 days a week. So, Friday night, I'm, extremely tired. So sometimes you've got to, take the rough with the smooth, and take on contracts that involve a bit more effort and a bit more graft. The hours sometimes can be long, and you've still got a 2-hour drive at 7 o'clock in the evening. It's kind of the reality, right? Choosing gigs maybe where you have to travel as well. Again, can be good as well as bad, depending on personal sort of situations as well. But can be quite cool working abroad and having that experience. New cultures, new people, really, really good. One of the things I'm envious of, actually, is in the permanent world. I know recently people have got these sort of mental health days where if you're feeling a bit bad and a bit down, you've actually got the right now to just have a day to yourself, which I think is really, really, really powerful and so needed, I think, in today's workplace. And it's great businesses are building this into their permanent packages. It can be quite hard as a contractor, because you're always in this kind of world of pay, no pay. If I take some time out, do I become dispensable, perhaps? Can they sort of do it without me, and do they really need me? And so you do go through a lot of emotions sometimes as well. And taking time out can be hard, but it is really important. But again, easy to say, take some time out and recharge the batteries and give yourself a bit of a break. But it's hard when you're earning, and maybe you need to earn a bit of cash. Like I had that situation when I first started, right? I hadn't worked in ages. It wasn't particularly a pleasant situation on a personal level, and kind of really had to put in a shift and couldn't really take a break. So it can be hard. We talk people through kind of really good ways to get some downtime, get a bit of time out, reflect, maybe use time between contracts. At least don't leave on Friday, go to something new on a Monday type of thing as well. Maybe a couple of days just to kind of let yourself relax a little bit and get some downtime. Really, really important. Because you go again, right? The cycle keeps on going. So but yeah, so we kind of do this a lot with clients. We try and make it fun. It's very modular. You know, you may tick 10 of these boxes and we'll focus on 5. You know, brilliant. You know, it's all quite cool. But all with the view that it meets your personal and professional aspirations, right? There's never really a one size fits all, you know, to a lot of this. Question coming actually. Are there any recruitment agencies that help with getting contracts? Not specifically per se. It's obviously like the Accentures and the PricewaterhouseCoopers, a couple of smaller companies like Platform Smart and Challenge Curve and a few others underneath kind of big picture, you know, do recruit a lot of sort of freelance people, which can be quite useful to get on their books as an associate, which can be really quite handy. But I think in the main, and if you've had different experiences, you know, please do say, but in the main, you're either kind of, you know, networking and trying to get people wanting to hire you, which does happen over time, but also you kind of also in part just applying through things like LinkedIn Jobs, you know, JobServe, Monster, you know, whatever, you know, and many other sort of these kind of aggregate websites as well. You know, just looking for opportunities and applying. Also really useful to sign up to these, you know, all the agencies that are going through JobServe, get the names, go on the website to register, send in your CVs. And that's where kind of, I think, resilience comes in. You've really got to, how do you get someone to pick up the phone and talk to you? And I go back to that skill of being a BA. What are we really good at? We're really good at understanding people, persona mapping, right? Empathy mapping. We're really good at, you know, understanding personas and trying to get the best out of them. Understand the persona of a recruitment consultant. And it'll help you to work out how they pick up my call. Right? But you've got to be a bit belligerent, a bit resilient, you know. Again, a lot easier pre-COVID because they had offices and you could sometimes, well, if you were living near London, you could walk into offices, perhaps, you know, big cities, Manchester, Dublin, who were present, maybe different in the current world, and harder, right? But you can do it. Build good relationships with good recruitment consultants. Because again, sometimes they just remember your name and will give you a call first before they make offers public, perhaps as well. You know, you're free. I've got a gig. Do you fancy it? And so sometimes that can work. So, yeah, networking, building a good network pays dividends in the long term, I would say as well. So, I'm 20 years old. I'm still doing it. Still enjoying it. Still learning. I'm still learning. That journey never stops, right? It can't stop. The world's moving too fast. So I like the mindset as well, I think. I've constantly got to be thinking, constantly got to be proactive. What's the next thing? What's the next skill I need to learn? What's the skill I need to refine, maybe? You know, so it's a constant, you know, quite a nice challenge almost as a mindset of thinking about the future, thinking how do I get better? How do I improve? How do I stay relevant, right? Because there's plenty of people younger than me, probably with a lot more energy, you know. So, you know, you kind of have to keep reinventing yourself, which is quite cool as well. Any more questions? Some stuff in the chat.
I don't see any in the Q&A or the chat, but if anyone would like to come off mute and ask Imtiaz a question, you're more than willing to do so.
Please do.
Can I ask another question? Do you find that you work in different industries, or or is it are your clients kind of, for example, like you said, you worked a lot in retail before, so are you still doing retail, or would you like work in health, or would you work in finance, or would you work in manufacturing, or would are the projects and the clients that you work with today, how varied are they?
So I think initially I think it was through any strategy that probably had the first few contracts when I started were predominantly retail and hospitality. But over the years now, I've done airports, aviation. I was at an army base for 6 months. Don't know anything about the army, know nothing about planes. Insurance for a year. What else? I done fintech. Weirdly, I worked on a crypto project. Didn't know a thing about digital currency before I started, but obviously learned a lot. It's a really cool space. But yeah, so over time, I managed to spread my wings, I guess, and really get some really cool experiences in different countries, different industries, different ways of doing things as well, which is, I've really enjoyed. I don't think I'd have probably got that. I'd have been permanent, perhaps. Really good exposure.
I think that's one of the things that's, I suppose, drawing me to the idea of becoming a freelance and a consultant, is that level of freedom. And you mentioned you have a business partner. So do you find do you have a company together, or how are you? Because that's when I was like, rather than just being by myself completely, is having somebody else to share the load with and things.
Yeah. So I mean, I've got an independent company, but with Lewis, we've called ourselves Kilts Kente. He's Scottish. I've got East African roots, so there's a blend of culture in our company name. We do a couple of things. We do like a murder mystery experience. We do for BAs and IT professionals. It's quite a cool gamified 3-4 hour experience that is, almost bringing BA skills to life. So we kind of don't teach you through PowerPoint. We teach you through games and reflective learning and having a bit of fun. Again, kind of different experience. And we've created this model as well. And having a partner is different for sure. If you're on your own, you've got your own destiny. You can make your own decisions, and you kind of fall and die by your own sword. But it's partnerships are not easy. They can be really amazing, and we have a lot of fun doing some of this stuff. But you do clash. You do have debates. You do have different needs and that as well. So it's not I wouldn't say it's a bed of roses all the time, right? You've got to work through some like challenging conversations, but and a lot of partnerships don't survive, right? I know a lot of people have tried partnering with other people and it doesn't quite work. So it does take a lot of work.
Okay.
Splitting money, splitting contracts, all the ugly stuff, right? That no one really talks about. Expenses and all. It's some quite hard conversations sometimes. Can be rewarding if luckily now Lewis and I have survived nearly 5 years of working together and seem to kind of and we enjoy it and we make it work. So it's been not always that easy. Any more questions? Any more thoughts?
Regarding the
contracts,
do you draw up the contracts yourself, or like do you have like a solicitor, or I see you've like legal advice there, or admin and legal on your Snakes and Ladders board.
Yeah.
But how do you go about like forming that contracts to make sure that it, I suppose, it has the necessary legal context, we'll say?
Yeah. I guess a couple of things. I mean, I've built, obviously after a few years, you build up a bit of experience of reading contracts and spotting things in there. But definitely legal advice is pivotal, especially when starting out. In the UK, especially, getting your contracts IR35 reviewed as well to make sure you're compliant with the legislation, which is quite tricky. You know, like any legislation, is sub clauses and everything else. And that needs a specialist skill, which, you know, I know a bit about, but I wouldn't ever want to tell people that I'm a, you know, that level where I could legally validate contract on your behalf. I wouldn't, you know, that'd be very sort of foolish almost. Because things like IR35, also the working practices are really important, right? You know, the contract may say you've got the right of substitution, but actually, can you actually do it in reality? Right? If you're sick, can I replace you for a couple of weeks, right? And so some of that stuff's quite important to think through on, you know, especially with IR35, if it, you know, if it applies in your jurisdiction. So certainly, yeah, having good trusted legal advice is important. And we've got a couple of people, but you know, there's plenty of services out there as well, right? That you can get, you know, good legal advice as well. You know. Similarly, accounting as well, right? Good accountants are essential. But you learn tricks as you go along, right? After years of doing it, you kind of learn how to do your own VAT returns, profit and loss, submitting personal accounts, company accounts. But, you know, yeah, good accountants obviously valuable. So I was going to say something, I think somebody was going to.
Yeah, I just had a question. If when you're starting off, how do you know, do you find, is there any forums and things to make sure that, let's say somebody, a prospective client, is offering you a certain level of pay, or, you know, when you're negotiating the deal, obviously you have to think about what you can do and what you're worth, but you don't want to undercut or undersell. So is there any resources you could point to that could, you know, that would be useful to kind of get an idea of what the market is like at the moment, if that makes sense?
Knowing your value, right? That's a tough one.
Yeah.
I know the IIBA, I think, James, do a global survey, right? That includes salaries, which I think is more on the permanent side, I believe. I'm not sure if it includes freelance rates in there.
Yeah, I think it's more permanent roles.
Yeah. Quite hard to know, I guess, your own value. Quite hard to work out what someone's willing to pay. They're quite tough, you know, they're quite tough questions, and I guess research helps. I don't think I'd love to find actually a pivotal resource that really defines exactly what you can and can't do. But I think it's a classic combination of a bit of elicitation in terms of what you see as day rates being offered. You know, JobServe and Monster will give, you know, banking BAs are getting a lot more than maybe retail BAs, because banking, you know, is generally paid a bit more. Between consultancy rates, where you may be getting $300 a day, but actually the consultant's billing a lot more. So you can get, you know, do some market research on what businesses are willing to pay against what you perceive as your own value. You know, and I think if you're like me, you just took the first offer that came my way, right, back in 2010. I didn't even negotiate, I just signed as quickly as possible. And I talk about legal contracts, I just signed it. I was just so glad for an offer, right? I took it. But be a bit more intelligent, I would advise. Negotiating your own rates, your own value. can be tricky. Worthwhile getting going as well. I think it's a balance when you start out. You can be aggressive and go for that higher rate, but sometimes worth just getting going and taking a good enough rate that gives you everything you need before kind of stepping up. Essentially. But yeah, do try and work out your own worth, your own skills. How good are you? Right, and if you know you're really good, don't be afraid to charge for it. Don't be afraid to prove it. It's amazing what people will pay, actually. One thing you do learn is you may struggle to get a 1% pay rise as a permanent person, but as a freelancer, occasionally you can play hardball and get some quite good rates. It takes time.
Okay. And so
I have two. Sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
I've got two questions for you. So one is like, how do you set up a digital portfolio for your services and market it? And secondly, I know, as you said, you landed into a BA job, and that's something that I hear from most of the BAs. If you could go back in time and do things differently, what would you change, or how would you approach it? So two questions for you.
We'll go back in time. I would have loved to have had a mentor through my first 2 years. Someone to slap me around the head and go, stop taking these rubbish rates, show your value more, show your skill more, negotiate better, challenge harder, which I think would have definitely benefited me, for sure. It's kind of why we do what we do, right? Because I think, I could have easily, frankly, earned a lot more in my first 3-4 years as a contractor, sure. I've got no question in my mind about that. Had I had someone to help me, that would have been definitely something. I advise anyone, even if it's not me, right? A friend, someone you know that's freelancing, someone who's got some stripes, ask them. Just extract as much information as you can from anyone willing to advise and help. Always a good thing. People are always willing, like these sessions, right? Always willing to help, and offer some advice. Definitely mentorship, I think. And James does it with his chapter in Ireland, right? The mentor scheme in the IIBA. Just helping other people is, I think, so valuable, right? In every professional, even personal kind of conundrum that we're facing, have good mentors, good people around you. There's another part to your question, I think, or a second question.
Yeah, it was like, how do you set up a digital portfolio for your services and market it? I know you said there are traditional ways of doing your job search, contract search, but then if you want to start working on a digital footprint, how do you go about it?
It's a good question. I think LinkedIn's the obvious one, right? I've never really had a website. I should have. I've used LinkedIn more, I guess, as my digital footprint. It is still the de facto standard place. And often, the reason why I've never done a website is because I often see a lot of websites and they're stuck in time. It was done in 10 years ago, and it's still 10 years old, and it looks really stale and really old. I've avoided on my contracting side of what I do, the website. I use LinkedIn a lot, and other smaller platforms a little bit. I've also got things like case studies that I've designed and documented myself, which I send through when I apply for contracts, start talking to people, so they get a view of, because it's quite hard on the CV to really show all the value that I've driven. So things like case studies I find really powerful. Quotes from clients I've been on as well in that case study, kind of helping to showcase my work. So it's just me pretending that I'm really good. People vouching for me is powerful, right? I think it's the best way forward when people hopefully say you've done a good job, right? As opposed to you've messed it up.
Thank you.
But nothing beats face-to-face. Maybe I'm a bit old school in my approach, but nothing beats real human connections, real good. Turning up at not necessarily conferences, but networking events, you know, whether it's IIBA events in person or just general, if you're lucky enough to be near a city, there's always some professional events happening, right? In the IT space, it doesn't have to be BA space. Build good people relationships. I've always found it more powerful in the end than digital, but that's just my personal approach.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you fancy playing a game of Snakes and Ladders, give me a call.
So I had
I think you can go for it.
Yeah, I suppose we all know the way things go in projects and deadlines and goals and things are movable feasts, and so I suppose there's always changes to requirements or scope creep or whatever. Do you account for that in your contracts, or like to say, okay, yes, grand, but you have to pay me more, or is it something, well, you've changed the goal, so you can pay me up until now, and then we have to renegotiate, or?
Yeah, 100%. I've got to be really careful, because if I'm signed up for, you know, delivering a functional spec, for example, right, by 31st of November, for argument's sake, and I'm billing and I'm making progress, suddenly a big CR comes in that the project accepts. That means I'm going to get delayed. I've got to be very, very professional around that contract working arrangement and the impact of that. Because contractually, the expectation is I'm still going to get it done by 31st of, you know, November. So 100%, you've got to be really careful about knowing what you signed up to in your contract, firstly, right? And then when things change, making sure you have that open conversation with the right people about just making sure that loop is tied. Because when it goes wrong, blame comes your way. And I've had it before, right? Well, the contract said you'd do it. Hang on a minute, but things change. But the contract said you know, it's black and white. So personally, I've been caught out before in previous experiences. Not a nice place to be, again, from experience. So yeah, really, really good point. You know, you've got to wrap yourself, you know, and change contracts, change dates. Maybe to a point, renegotiate a rate if valid, if you're now asking to do more. Right? Absolutely within your right to you know. I remember one time I was asked to PM as well as BA. And this was after a few years, right? And I increased my rate. I was being asked to do more. But again, that took a few years of just saying, yes, I'll do it, before I kind of, you know, had the confidence to renegotiate. Yeah, really, really be careful with dates and what you've committed to. Justin, because when you know, right, when things go wrong in a project, it flies around. The good old blame game begins to happen, and the freelancers in the firing line often. So, you know, just cover. I don't like to use the word cover yourself, but kind of, you know, do make sure you address those things like a contract.
Okay,
it's a really good point.
Have you ever had a situation, and sorry, I know we've gone over time, maybe I can catch up separately, where you've agreed to deliver something, and then the client just hasn't given you the tools or the information, or they've decided, no, we're actually not going to go ahead with that project anymore. In that case, I suppose that would be in the contract that you would still get paid, would you? Or yeah, okay.
No. Depends on the contract. I've been let go in a day's notice before. Contract states we can terminate within a day. Again, it's what you sign up to, right? Part of in the UK with IR35 is, you're a freelancer, right? So you don't get the 3 months notice and all the good stuff that you do when you're permanent. And often a day's notice, a week's notice is common. So yeah, absolutely, you can be let go very quickly if it's going well. Once I was in a takeover situation, and they just got rid of contractors because it was in the middle of this whole takeover thing, and we just literally slowly walked out the door. Not what we can do, right? They're within their right. In the same way, I can do the same thing as well. Right? If I need to leave for a personal reason because I can't, fulfill an obligation, contractually, I can sometimes walk in a day. Obviously not a good thing to do, and do a good handover if you need to. But that's another massive consideration, right? You can be let go. Can just say goodbye. But by the same token, I know people in banking that have been permanent, have been permanent for a while. They've literally turned up and the pass doesn't work when they enter the building. And they've been let go overnight as permanent employees. So it can happen in both acts, really.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think so
we've
gone over time.
Failure.
I think we could talk about this all day. I'd love to stay here and chat longer, but I have to run to a IIBA Ireland strategy meeting. But thanks so much, Imtiaz, for taking the time to speak and to share your experience with contracting. And thanks so much for everyone for asking their questions. If you'd like to ask any more questions, Imtiaz, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. But for this evening, we will leave it there. But thanks again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone, or your day, wherever you're joining.
Cheers, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot. Speak soon.